All right, back at it now as we continue the conversation. I'm glad you're here for everything we're talking about today. Very busy, to say the least. It doesn't seem to slow down now, does it? And the answer is no, it doesn't. Kenneth A is an education attorney, consultant, former higher ed fellow at Campus Reform. He's joining me now. He's general counsel for over 20 years for 15 higher education institutions and an instructor at Suffolk and Brandeis Universities. Sir, good to have you here.
Hey, good morning, Steve. Thanks very much for having me.
Greatly appreciate it. It was recently reported that protesters disrupted Columbia's graduation, and one might ask which one. Because in addition to its main commencement, Columbia had, get this, folks, no fewer than 10 separate graduation ceremonies, often referred to as affinity graduations. Let's see, they had one for Black, Latino, Asian, LGBTQIA+, Jewish, Native, International, Disabled, First Generation, Low Income, blah, 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 blah. What in the world is going on? What happened to America being the great melting pot where e pluribus unum, of many, one? Well, what happened to that?
Sure. No, Steve, look, I think the one word I would use to describe this practice, and it's not just at Columbia, it's across the country, is pathetic. We've got to remember that for the last 30 or 40 years, we've been told that higher education is better off because of student diversity. And higher ed has been, and college universities have been the chief cheerleaders for diversity, and in particular racial diversity. And we've been told time and time again that diversity is an indispensable and an essential component and aspect of the higher ed experience.
Yeah,
and that
it's garbage. This idea that diversity is our strength is garbage. And it's not just, I'm not just going to pick on Columbia. It's also Princeton, American, Penn State, Colorado, Fresno State, William & Mary, the list. I could sit here and read the names of the universities all day long. Couldn't I?
Well, and again, it's not just focused on race-based graduation programs or student orientation or
most of it
housing or organizations. It's expanded beyond that. It includes segregating and separating students based on sexual orientation, religion, income, ethnicity, all under the guise of diversity. And if institutions really were committed to the value purported to diversity, they'd be really focusing on the aspects that bring students together, that would embrace the value
that's the point,
of bringing different people together. But that's not happening, and that's what's frustrating, I think, for a lot of us.
And how do you learn to deal? Look, America is by far, and not even close, the largest diverse population on the planet. It's not China. It's not India, obviously, because they're very monolithic. America is the largest diverse population on the planet, bar none. And yet, instead of learning to live with each other, learn from each other, understand each other, we're segregating ourselves into these little populations and then warring with each other. It seems to me, sir, like it's by design.
Well, look, they're focusing on the lines of identity and difference between students. And I think anytime you take students and you put them into these individual demographic silos, that's exactly what you're going to get. You're going to get an emphasis of the differences. There's no recognition anymore, appreciation of the shared common student experience. And just for example, Columbia would make you believe that their use of race-based graduation programs has a long-standing history and practice at Columbia. When if you look at it, for the better part of 250 years, they offered one unifying commencement program. And it wasn't just up until the last 20 years when they started offering, as you just pointed out, up to 10 separate and distinct graduation commencement ceremonies that, again, doesn't celebrate the characteristics or the factors that they place as valuable under diversity. In fact, it emphasizes differences and distinctions between individuals, and it does nothing to help people understand, appreciate, or work towards some level of cooperation with one another.
Wouldn't this practice violate the 1957 Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Civil Rights Act, and probably a few other federal statutes that I could cite if I took the time to dig them out and dust them off? Isn't this in direct violation of racist laws that have been put there to prevent this exact thing from occurring?
Well, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There are specific federal laws that prohibit discrimination based on race, Title VI in particular. But one of the things that these institutions will argue is that these are voluntary programs, that everyone and anyone is welcome at each one of these individual graduation programs. But let's be real about it. These events are exclusionary by nature, and they're exclusionary based on how you look, or where you're from, or who you may sleep with, or who you may pray to, or any number of other characteristics, again, that focus on lines of identity and difference and fail to address the common shared student experience.
Yeah. It's sad, Ken. It is
Well, it
sad.
is.
Can we fix it? Give me some hope here.
Yeah, well, I do. I think, we've got institutions around the country who've recognized that under the most recent administration, they're being challenged on, among other things, separating and differentiating between individuals based on race. You can see it most recently in around the country, where many institutions are dismantling their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, because there absolutely has been a recognition that those programs, to some extent, violate or closely come in potential violation of federal law by discriminating, segregating, and separating individuals on the very characteristics that we were supposed to be celebrating under diverse higher education.
Yeah. Diversity is nice, but it is not our strength when we separate ourselves into little camps, into each little tribe based on whatever differentiating criteria. It is wrong, period. Ken Tashjy, thank you for being here.
Steve, thanks very much for having me. Have a good day.
You come back anytime. All right. Common sense, it's in short supply in America, but it's not in short supply right here. Ken Tashjy just laying it on the line for you. Still to come, Liz Peek from Fox News, one of my favorites and maybe the longest contributor of this program. I'll be right back. It's the Steve Gruber Show.